Hey everybody, it's Chris Harrison here with another episode of the Main Points with Main Place. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest today, Brian Silotto. Brian is the Director of Major and Planned Giving at Richland Community College. So Brian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Chris, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Very good. Well, I really appreciate it. Certainly, I mentioned your role at Richland Community College. I do want you to be able to speak to that a little bit, but the title of this episode is going to be Moving to Decatur. And we kind of talked about it off air a little bit about how, quite honestly, Decatur's becoming a melting pot of the world right now. And you and your wife, Jody, being transplants here, we'll talk about that. We wanted you to come on and kind of share with us about that. So welcome.
Thank you, and I'm happy to do it. Love Decatur, and this setting is perfect for somebody like me. One that loves to talk,
right,
and two likes to talk about the place where he lives.
Yeah. So tell us. I say you're a transplant, but I know you have a history with Decatur. So take us back a little bit. And
Sure. My history with Decatur goes back to 1996.
Okay.
And full disclosure, I moved here in 1996 after a stint at my alma mater, working for Culver Stockton College, which also happens to be Chris's alma mater.
Let's go Wildcats. Yeah.
So we are a decade removed from one another.
Right.
I won't tell you which way. I'll let you guess. But I moved here for a job at Millikan University in 1996, and then stayed for the next 4+ years. And my wife Jody was a Long Creek resident and went to Mount Zion High School and then went to Millikan University. And then after graduate school, she ended up working there as well.
Okay.
And we met there.
Okay.
As two young college administrators.
Nice.
And so
I didn't know that's where you had met, actually.
Yeah, we met at she was a women's basketball All-American as a student athlete, and then worked there, and we met at a women's basketball game, ironically.
Wow.
And
neat.
Then we stayed until 2000, then we moved away and have been away since then. And,
okay.
As you were saying, we just moved back late this spring, early this summer.
23 years later. So, and I know you've been a lot of different places, but when the idea of coming back to Decatur became on the radar, what were your initial thoughts, in all honesty?
Well, we had always planned, since my wife was from this area has always felt like home. Decatur, Macon County, has always felt like home to us. We were married here in a Presbyterian church right across the street from Millikan's University campus. And we decided years ago that when we retire, we're going to retire to Decatur. Well, sadly, I'm not retired yet, and neither is she.
But you've got the to Decatur part figured out.
But we do. We decided it's time to come back home. It's time to come back to Decatur. And we moved here from Champaign. We had both been working at the University of Illinois for years, and decided, why not now?
Right.
Still have some family in town and in the area, as well as in Springfield, but we decided Decatur's where we want to be. And so we started looking. We had to find a realtor. We found one.
How about that?
In Chris, and we never looked back.
So retire to Decatur. That's another kind of buzz I've had lately, where people say, obviously houses are selling, and we don't talk about real estate a lot here, but people would say, why are people moving to Decatur? Who is moving to Decatur? And I kind of looked in the sky and I said, people are retiring to Decatur. So that's very interesting to hear that had been your guys' plan. And here it is. You just don't have the retire part figured out.
Retiring to Decatur was always the plan, and then we decided to take jobs here.
Sure.
Before that time came.
Right.
And we were living in Champaign at the time, both commuting over here.
Okay.
And decided, if we're both working in Decatur, why aren't we living in Decatur? We like to live where we work. It just makes sense to us. The commute's not horrible. People do it every day. But for us, living in the town where we work just makes sense. And like I said, Decatur's home.
Right.
There's so many things Decatur has to offer that I think people don't realize I get the question every day when somebody new finds out, oh, you just moved from Champaign. Why? And I'm thinking, well, here are the reasons. Well,
So
one,
what are those reasons?
yeah, one or two, between La Gondola and Creckles alone,
Hello.
that's reason enough
Yes.
to move to Decatur.
Yes.
And you can find
Champaign does not have that.
they do not have that, and you can find good food all over this town.
Right.
And some of the places I knew 20 some odd years ago don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them do.
Mm-hmm.
But there are new places that have popped up all over
Mm-hmm.
Decatur and Macon County as a whole.
Right.
And we're having a lot of fun discovering all those new places, going back to some of the old haunts.
Sure.
And it feels familiar yet still new.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a unique combination, especially for people in my age group, mid-50s,
Right.
is that there's newness to this town. There's growth in Decatur that I did not expect. Even though I've been coming back here over the last 20-some years to see family, and you never notice that growth really when
Right.
you're only going to one or two places.
Right.
But now living here, driving around, getting reacquainted with everything and everyone, people I knew before and new friends I'm making now, it is really fun to see what's happening in Decatur.
Yes.
And there's a lot, more than I could have ever imagined.
So the you said new growth. And I think, again, just like when people say, why'd you move back? The normal Decatur people are going to go, what are you talking about, growth? And I think, we all know what a scotoma is. It's a blind spot. You don't see it because it's right in front of you all the time. Whereas someone like you who has been removed and is here and paying attention and looking at the new things, the new growth, the new potentials that are happening, they're all around us.
They really are. As an example, I'd always known that Decatur had this great amphitheater, the Devon.
Right.
People were telling me, they built this a few years ago, part of the Park District, which, another point, Decatur's got one of the best park districts I've ever seen. And I know park districts pretty well because I worked in a college at the University of Illinois that produces a lot of park district directors.
Right.
And so I've been to a lot of park districts seeing people. Decatur's got one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. And it's a lot of fun to see that that's still true, because it was true 20 some years ago, and it's even more true now because of some of this growth. Well, I got to experience the Devon this summer for the first time ever.
Oh.
And now I'm hooked.
Right.
And I mean, I was seeing acts from the 80s and 90s because I'm an old guy, and they were still fun. And I've been to amphitheaters in St. Louis and Chicago and everywhere you can imagine where those pop up. Decatur has nothing to complain about when it comes to its music scene.
Right.
It's fantastic.
Right.
And they have local bands there. They do kids shows there. And, and I saw Rick Springfield
How about
this
it?
summer. I hadn't
Yeah.
seen him in about 30 years. And that was fun.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, you mentioned the amphitheaters in Chicago and St. Louis and Indy, and, that's your 18,000 to 20,000 people. I mean, this is the 3,000 person venue that is top notch. I mean, the service, the experience, the views. I mean,
Yeah.
the experience of getting in and out of it even is just so simple.
Yeah, and I think my experience there sums up in very short measure kind of what Decatur's all about. You go to the Devon, you feel welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like it's important that you're there and people are excited that you are there. And then you go to the concessions and you don't run out of money.
Right.
Because it's affordable. The tickets themselves are
Right.
affordable.
Mm-hmm.
The seating is spectacular. The only thing larger venues have on the Devon is that they're larger.
Right.
That's really the only thing that they have going for them more. Not to knock those places. I love going to
Sure.
concerts and events at those places. But I don't like the traffic. I don't like the cost of the concessions. I don't like all those issues that we don't have here
Right.
at a place like the Devon.
Right. So, speaking of traffic, we had a relocation in yesterday. Somebody were giving them the community tour, and they said, we want to be within 10 or 15 minutes of where they're going to be working. And I said, no problem. Like, you can go anywhere in the city, reasonably from where they're at within 15 minutes.
Unless you find a train.
You got to
And-
know how to get around them.
Well,
Okay, it'll make it 20, but
well, and Chris, that's one of the things that I find for me is just fun. Is when I first moved here in '96, I learned my way around town because I'd get stuck by trains and have to go find alternate routes.
right.
So that's how I learned my way around Decatur initially, 20 some years ago, was by getting stuck behind a train, saying a few choice words about it, and then turning around and finding my way where I needed to be
Right.
via another route.
Right.
And I still do that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
it's so
sit
fun.
and wait for a train
Right.
because I know I can go a half mile this way, or I can go to Jasper because it's got a viaduct that I can go under, and those types of things.
If we were doing the 5 things about relocating to Decatur, rule number 1 is don't wait on the train, right? Because it will stop, it will start backing up, and then it'll pull forward and find the way around because you never know what you might find.
Well, I think most people don't realize trains go both directions
Right,
at the same
right.
time.
Yeah. Well, good. What's the what's the new gym? You mentioned the Devon, but what's something else, from 23 years that you go, wow, where did this come from, or where did this area blossomed as though it wasn't before?
Yeah, we were talking before we came on air about the coffee shops, coffee bars, wine bars, and breweries
Right.
here in town. None of that existed
Right.
back then, and it's booming
Yeah.
in this town. And to me, that's refreshing because those are some things that I really enjoy. But even more so is they're affordable in this town.
Right.
You can go to a pour over coffee shop and not pay $15 for your cup of coffee. I did that. I actually have one right here that I got
Perfect.
before I walked over.
From the River Coffee Company,
From
just
River
directly
Coffee
across
Company.
the street. A
And-
prior guest of ours too.
And they treat you like family in there.
Right.
And that's special. And that really is, Decatur puts its arms around its people.
Right.
And from, businesses to whomever, that's kind of the feeling I get and got way back when I lived here, is that Decatur just kind of embraces its residents, takes them in, and makes you feel like you're a part of it. So that hasn't changed. But things like those coffee shops and breweries and all that, that's brand new. Some of the other things that's new, we have just a thriving food truck scene
Oh, yes.
in this town.
Yes.
And I know they're popping up in cities everywhere, but this is Decatur. That's not something that most people would assume is going to be happening on the scale that it is
Right.
in this town. And people will say, we don't have any new restaurants. Look around. They just happen to be on 4 wheels.
Right. Yeah.
And I haven't been to a bad one yet.
The tornado truck. My son actually worked there over the summer. Their Italian beef nachos. You've got tacos out of a truck. You've got your fair foods. You've got your corn dogs. You've got hot dogs, barbecue. Everything's coming out of a truck now. And
Richland
it's great.
Community College, our culinary institute, has a food truck.
Right.
And it's out and about town on during the week. And they come down, they set up in one of the parks downtown as well. And it's student run, which is a refreshing thing to see.
Yes.
And they make fantastic food. And
Right.
they're always changing the menu. It could be burgers one day, could be gourmet macaroni and cheese the next day. And that's fun. For a guy like me that's always worked on a college campus,
Right.
to see a community college like Richland being out in the community doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is connecting with that community.
Right. One of the many great things about Richland that could absolutely be an entire episode on its own, Richland Community College, because you did welcome us to a tour there about a week or so ago, and we had a great time out there. So we really should do another episode about Richland.
Would absolutely love to. We have a lot of things to talk about.
Good. So tell me one more thing I think maybe that's been a challenge about relocating to Decatur, and kind of how that was overcome or how that worked out for you.
Well, I'm going to go to the real estate side.
Uh-oh.
I've lived in some towns. I've lived in West Lafayette, Indiana. I've lived in Indianapolis, Indiana. I've lived in Champaign. I've lived all over the place. Even did a stint in North Carolina. Housing is never easy. And Decatur, what I found moving back here was that Decatur has hidden areas all over this town that you really have to look for to find. Definition of a hidden gem.
Right.
And I found that was very true with housing coming here. There's plenty of great homes.
Right.
But they're not all, you don't just pick a street, drive down it, and go look at all these fantastic houses. You have to really know where the neighborhoods are.
Right.
Once you're in those neighborhoods, you realize, oh my goodness, this just goes on forever here.
Yeah.
It opens up, then you see what your options are. And not to do a commercial, but I'm doing a commercial anyway. That's where Chris came in and was just fantastic because he knew the city so well. I knew it 20 some years ago.
Right.
Had lived on the west end, had lived on the east end. And now I ended up on the south end on the lake.
On the lake, yes.
And I never knew there was so much that the lake offered this community until I started looking for a house on it. And then discovered all these little hidden areas I never knew existed.
Right.
I assumed that they were there, but I was never really a part of them before.
Right. And that's an interesting point. When I asked the question about challenge, I really didn't know where that was going to go. But that is a challenge that we have is, kind of putting all those pieces together. And, in this economic environment, it has been a rather tough environment to be a buyer. So we won't go too much into that, but appreciate the kind words on that too.
Well, and on another point, usually what I find is the hardest thing to do whenever I move is find a good barber and a good butcher.
Okay.
I didn't have that problem here at all.
Okay.
I found Northgate Barbershop.
Perfect.
Which has been great because I wear a flat top and not everybody does those anymore. And then I discovered the House of Meat.
The House of Meat. Yes.
And I was pretty well set because now I have a good barber and a good butcher and a good realtor.
How about it?
What else do you really need?
Perfect. Love it. Well, and truly, I think the barber and the butcher, that really is kind of the essence of what this is when you move to a community, it's who's the electrician, who's the HVAC person that I need to call, who does lawn service, who pushes snow. It's those types of things that you don't know, you can't think about all the time until you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Very
Good.
true.
Thank you for sharing those things. So anything else to add, and certainly anything else you want to share about moving to Decatur?
Only I'll finish with just the fact that, we couldn't have made a better decision for us. Decatur may not be for everybody. And I understand that in your business, you understand that.
Right.
But I will throw a quote out from my good friend and colleague Reverend Courtney Carson up at Richland Community College. Last week at the Community Thanksgiving luncheon at the hotel out west, he was the keynote speaker. And at one point he finished with, if you don't like living in Decatur, just move. Because we don't need you. We want people here.
Right.
And I don't want to have our city officials throwing tomatoes at me or anything, but we want people here who want to be here.
Right.
And if you don't want to be here, why are you here? And I thought, what, that's a quote that I don't know where he got it. He may have gotten it from somebody else somewhere along the line.
Sounds like he might have just made that up because that's pretty genuine right there. If you don't like it.
That's a sentiment that is always with me, is that if you don't like it here, then leave because you're not making it better. And if you live somewhere that you're not trying to help make it better, then don't be there anymore.
And again, I think the number of new people that have moved to the Midwest, Illinois, Decatur, are from all over. And they all left the places they left for reasons seeking something new and different and better. And it's not for everyone. I know some that have left already, but I know others that have really put their roots down and said, this is a great city. I'm so glad we're here from wherever. A lot of West Coast, a lot of Southern people have come to Decatur. So this again is why I wanted to open this up and kind of speak to those people that are new to Decatur.
Well, and I think people will find that there are a lot of cities out there that market themselves in big, bright neon lights. and they say, look how great we are, look how new we are, look how special we look.
Mm-hmm.
Decatur doesn't put itself out there like that.
Right.
Decatur is a more, hey, why don't you come here, check us out, see what you think.
Mm-hmm.
We bet you're going to like us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine with me.
Right.
I've been to those places. I've lived in those places that put the Vegas lights up.
Right.
That's fine. That's great. They've been wonderful communities. I've loved living in every single one of them. Decatur doesn't act the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's refreshing. Decatur is more of a check us out, tell us what you think.
Yeah. Actions are more important than words.
We get things done here.
That's right.
Yeah.
We get it done. So awesome. Well, very good. Brian, thank you so much. This was everything I expected it to be. So I really appreciate you joining us.
Chris, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. This is another episode of the Main Points with Main Place. To check out past or future Main Points, find us at YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.